So we are done with the exception handling and the model, and we have a controller, a structure defined in the controller, like it can receive all the requests and pass some response, but we don't be doing everything in the control itself. The controller is just to receive the requests. All business logic is done in a separate layer called as service layer, and service layer has nothing to do with database connections or interactions with the data. For that again we need another layer, the repository layer. So we'll first create the repository layer and then we'll create the service layer, and then we'll make the controller communicate with service layer and service layer communicates with the repository layer. So I'll create the repository layer first, so that I create a package called with the same name, com code 365 and services to-dos dot repository. In this I'll create an interface, and I name this interface as to-dos repository. This is the interface, and if you see, we are working with this public interface. To-dos repository extends JPA repository. So this is what we need. The above one line of code will provide all the CRUD methods that can be used to perform CRUD operations on the entity. So this particular code line will help us create all CRUD operations, perform all CRUD operations. So I say extends JPA repository, and T here is the entity which is to-dos, and the ID is of type long in our DB or the Pojo class that we have created. I am importing models. So with this you get all the CRUD operating methods that you can use, the find all, delete method, find by ID, all that you are getting from JPA repository now. Now this interacts with the database, and controller won't directly interact with the repository. Instead we have another layer in between, that is service layer. So I create a service layer now, again a package, and com.code 365 dot services to-dos and service. Now I create another class and name it as to-dos service. Now in service class, before we talk much about service class. Let's try to run our project and see if everything is as expected. So I run a Spring Boot app. Okay, so there is an error. Let's see what yes, there should be an error actually. Try to understand this error. Error creating bean with name entity manager factory. If you know Spring framework, then you'll understand this. Defined in class path, invocation of init method, no identifier, models. Okay, let's see this. Thing is, like, you need to annotate this with repository, which says that you want an object to be created, and Spring takes the responsibility of this. Likewise for service also, I need to annotate it with service. you can get the object of this repository into service, and that object creation is done by Spring when you say @auto-void and you say private to-dos repository to-dos. So I'm creating an object of this layer in this layer, and I'm just giving the reference, whereas Spring helps in inserting the object at the required time. That's what Spring is famous for. So I did that spelling mistake. Okay, now I got an object. This I just create a reference, and Spring takes the responsibility of creating the object. And let's see if for the moment I don't think I'll be creating any methods. Now if I run again, let's see if it has any errors to report. So the error it is trying to say is init method failed, nested exception, no identifier specified for entity. So the problem is with entity now. So let's open the entity class. So models to-dos, and as the name says, it is unable to get the ID of this class. So I need to mention ID, and this again you need to import from JavaX persistence. See, in repository we are passing the ID type, but here I didn't declare this as the ID of this entity, and I can do that by using this annotation, and this is the type I'm mentioning over here. So now when I save this and run again, now you can see started successfully. And the other thing, if I don't mention service and if I save this, now it may not report an error. Okay, it may not report an error now because I'm not looking for an object in controller. Okay, so now we'll start working with the to-do controller, and the to-do controller will connect to or communicate with the service, and service in return will communicate with the repository, and repository takes the responsibility of communicating with the database. So this is the layer or the architecture. So in this we'll work with all to-dos, get to-dos, which means we have to return all the to-dos available. So we won't be returning all to-dos as a string. So what we'll do is we don't return a string, which makes we'll return a list of to-dos. So import from util and import to-dos. So return type is no more a string. We'll see what, and we need an object of the service layer. So we say private to-dos service. Earlier we used to say before Spring we used to say new to-dos service, but now this new to-do service or the object creation will be taken by, that responsibility is taken by Spring. And how do we give that to Spring? You need to say @auto-void. When you say @auto-void, Spring takes the responsibility of placing the object of service class into this reference. And when an object is created, you can say todos service dot and a method that is available in to-do service. Now let's go into to-do service and create a method over here. So here I say a method public which returns list to-dos, again the same thing, and get to-dos. So this is the method that will call from controller. So you see, get to-dos, okay, and this service, it interacts with the repository. So when I say interact with the repository, I need an instance of repository. Again, because of auto void, Spring takes the responsibility of providing an object into this reference, and when an object is there, todos repository dot find all. See these methods. Did I mention all these methods in the repository? No. But how did I get all these methods? It's because of extends JPA repository. So when I say find all, it is like select star from table name, to which I get multiple records, and those multiple records I place in a list and then I return it. And I need to import these. Let me import it. Okay, so here I need to return the list. So I say simply return the list. Done. Now when I'm returning something from here, I need to receive something over here. So here I say list of type to-dos, and I say to-dos list equal to, and I return to-dos list. Done. So everything went fine. Now we need postman. Okay, so with the help of postman, now we'll go for a get method, and then we'll see get to-dos. That's the one we are working, get to-dos, to-dos slash get to-dos, and you click on send. And here we got all the objects or the data in JSON format. So these are the records we have in database, and we got all the records. And here you see Hibernate, there is a query, and this query is because of the resources, application properties, and the value, the true value what you have given to show SQL. And because of this you got the query displayed here. So this is how you get the usage of get method to get all the contents of the table. So, okay, let's continue with the second one, wherein we'll try to get one record, one to do. Here if you see, when I pass to do slash get to dos, I get all the to dos. What if I want to get 1006? So I need to say get to dos slash 1006. Now if I press send, it won't work because I'm not handling it as of now. So this is how, this is because of exception handling that we have done. We'll see later on about testing the exception handling. But how do I get the record with the ID 1006? So for that, what I need to do is get to do slash, till here I have the mapping, but what about this mapping? I can't say slash 1006 because this is a mapping to the string 1006. It could be 1005 also, 1004. The ID could be anything. So such a variable, if you think that can vary, so put it in something like this. Now this is a variable. It's not like a perfect match looking for get to do slash brace id and brace close. No, this, the value that you pass in here from the URL is considered as a variable, and the value is placed into the variable id. Again, we won't be returning a string. Instead we return something else, and that something else is actually optional. Okay, so Java util, and here we say to do's and get to do, and the variable or the value available in that path, the id, you take it in path variable, you import it path variable. Okay, and then you say of type long id, and again now the same thing, you call the to do service dot, you need a method. We have get to do's which return multiple to do's, which is not our case. Instead we need a single to do to be returned, single record to be returned. Now for that, what we need to do is we create another public method. Return type is optional, okay, and of type to do's, and you say get to do, and again this takes an argument, you just return something. Let's fix this, Java util and get to do, so it takes an id, long id, a variable, and this method we need to call from here, service dot get to do. Okay, so this is the method, and what do we pass? We pass an id, and this id is nothing but 1006. So 1006 is passed to this method, and this method passes it to the repository, to do's repository dot find by id, and you pass the id, and this returns a single record. So you say, you take that in the same thing, optional of type to do's, and you say to do equal to, and this is what you return to do. And when you return this, again you need to receive it in here. Now it's almost same as what we have done earlier. So you say optional to do's and to do equal to done. Now what do you return? You return to do. Okay, let's save this. Let's save this as well. I don't need this anymore. Okay, now let's send this and see id 1006, so the value related to all that. So this is how you create a single getting record using the get mapping, and path variable is the important thing to understand. Path variable is nothing but the variable or the value which is available in the path, which you don't consider as a hard-coded string. Instead this may change. Now if I say 2, if at all I have a record with 2, I get with that. But what if I pass something that's not there, like 1001? Let's see if it is there, null. So this is something we should send in more meaningful way. For that, what I'll do is I'll do it right away. So we need to do the exception handling. Now I'll check if this is currently it is null. So this is what we are returning, and we are returning null. So I say if to do dot is present. If it is something, then I say return to do. What if it's nothing, or it's not there, the data is not available? Then you throw a new exception. To do exception, the name of the class what we have, to do exception, and the message is to do with ID, and the value, that is the ID, not found. Okay, now save this and you send it now, and see something, that's a mistake actually. To do with ID not found. Okay, so this all you can ignore. This is the message we can pass to the client. Likewise, when we do some mistake, or when there is no record available in the database, then what we'll do? Again, we need to do proper exception handling. You say if to-dos list dot is empty. If there is nothing, then you say throw new to do exception, and you pass some message, no to-dos available or found, something like that. When you have nothing in your database, this works fine. When you have at least one record in your database, you return that. So this is how we do the exception handling. So in the next session we see post mapping, that is to insert something new into database.